From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
We hope that this will be the beginning of a new era where there will be more emphasis on the role of the people in the everyday politics of our country.
After more than 15 years in detention, Burma's pro-democracy leader Aung San Suu Kyi wins a seat in parliament. We'll speak with her biographer, Peter Popham, a reporter with The Independent of London, who himself has been deported from Burma and met with Suu Kyi twice.
After more than 15 years in detention, people all over Burma have enormous respect for her, and basically they believe that she is their rightful ruler. But that's the thing which it is hard to appreciate from outside, the degree to which she is seen as the legitimate ruler of the country.
Then we go to Bahrain, where security forces continue the crackdown on protesters and jailed human rights leader Abdulhadi Al-Khawaja, who enters the 54th day of his hunger strike. We'll speak with his daughter Zainab, as well as with Nabil Rajab of the Bahrain Center for Human Rights, who was just released from detention.
The right of expression, the right to hold gatherings, these are two rights the regime is trying to take away from us. I want to tell you that we should go to Manama, hold protests and without permission, to stand up to this government and maintain that this is one of our rights.
All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The U.S. and allied countries are boosting their support for Syrian rebels fighting the regime of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. On Sunday, the Obama administration and at least 60 other governments agreed to pay the rebels $100 million in aid. The U.S. has also pledged to send communications equipment to help the rebel forces. The move marks the most direct U.S. intervention in an Arab Spring conflict since the U.S. took part in the NATO bombing of Libya last year. Speaking at the Friends of Syria conference in Turkey, Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton touted the growing U.S. role in Syria.
Today, we called for an immediate end to the killing in Syria, and we urged the Joint Special Envoy, Kofi Annan, to set a timetable for next steps. The world will not waver. Assad must go, and the Syrian people must be free to choose their own path forward. But the United States is also going beyond humanitarian aid and providing support to the civilian opposition, including communications equipment that will help activists organize, evade attacks by the regime, and connect to the outside world.
Burmese pro-democracy leader Aung San Suu Kyi has reportedly won her first bid for parliament after spending much of the past 20 years under house arrest and in detention. If confirmed, the vote could herald a new era for Burma following decades of military rule. After the initial results were announced, the Nobel Peace Prize winner Suu Kyi addressed her supporters outside the National League for Democracy headquarters in Rangoon.
We hope that this will be the beginning of a new era where there will be more emphasis on the role of the people in the everyday politics of our country. We also hope that we will be able to go further along the road towards national reconciliation. We will charge all the irregularities that took place, not in any spirit of vengeance or anger, but because we do not think that these should be overlooked. We do not think that such practices should be encouraged in any way. And so it is only with the intention of making sure that things improve in future.
We'll have more on Burma after headlines, speaking with Aung San Suu Kyi's biographer, Peter Popham, author of The Lady and the Peacock, The Life of Aung San Suu Kyi. Mali's political crisis is deepening more than a week after dissident soldiers staged a military coup. Tuareg rebels have seized the ancient city of Timbuktu, a major prize in their long-running fight for autonomy in the north. The ruling military junta, meanwhile, is under pressure from the West African regional bloc ECOWAS, facing a deadline of today to hand back power or face sanctions. Thousands of people marched in two major rallies in Florida this weekend to call for justice in the killing of the unarmed African American teenager Trayvon Martin. On Saturday, demonstrators marched in Sanford, where they heard from speakers including Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson.
We are not going back to the days where we were killed and nobody did nothing about it. There will be justice for Trayvon Martin.
Zimmerman will go to trial. That does not stop racial profiling and rising violence in our country. The same people who finance this law, this horrible law which incentivizes vigilantism, stand your ground. The same folks who finance voter suppression. If they take our votes and take our lives, we will not let them take our dignity.
Another large rally was held the following day, Sunday, in Miami. The attorneys for Trayvon Martin's family say they've asked the Justice Department to probe reports. The Sanford Police Department overruled an investigator on the scene of Trayvon's killing who recommended charging the shooter, George Zimmerman. Zimmerman remains free. He has not been charged. Evidence continues to emerge, casting doubt on Zimmerman's claim he acted in self-defense. A forensics expert has determined it was not Zimmerman's voice crying for help on the 911 call placed by a neighbor right before Zimmerman shot Trayvon dead.
Does he look hurt to you? I can't see him. I don't want to go out there. I don't know what's going on. So they're sending him.
So you think he's yelling help?
Yes.
All right, what is your phone number?
Just there's gunshots.
Sanford police have said they believe the voice pleading for help was Zimmerman's, but Trayvon's parents say those cries came from their son. Now, Tom Owen, the chair emeritus of the American Board of Recorded Evidence, has said he's used voice identification software to rule with 99% certainty that the cries are not Zimmerman's. Another expert interviewed by the Orlando Sentinel reached the same conclusion. The mayor of White Plains, New York, has finally apologized to the family of a 68-year-old Marine veteran fatally shot by police in his own home. Kenneth Chamberlains, Sr., an African American former Marine, was killed after police responded to a false alert from his medical pendant. The officers broke down Chamberlains' door, tasered him, then shot him dead. That was on November 19th of last year. On Friday, more than 4 months later, White Plains Mayor Tom Roach issued a statement offering condolences to Chamberlains' family. The move came one day after Chamberlains' son, Kenneth Jr., publicly criticized Roach and other city officials for staying silent about the case for so long. Chamberlains' killing is expected to go before a grand jury in the coming weeks. You can see our interview with Kenneth Chamberlain Jr. at democracynow.org. Occupy Wall Street activists in New York continue to stage protest actions as they seek to rejuvenate the movement after a winter lull. On Friday, demonstrators marched through Manhattan and converged on the New York Stock Exchange at the end of the business day.
The closing bell of the stock exchange symbolizes the prioritization of economics over politics in our society, the fact that our politicians are more beholden to these institutions than to the people they're supposed to represent. So by holding the people's gong, we're having a symbolic representation of our response. We're saying, no, the priority has to be families, the priority has to be workers, students, immigrants. That needs to be the priority, and that's why we're out here.
Friday's protest was followed by a march across the Brooklyn Bridge Sunday to mark 6 months since hundreds were arrested carrying out the same action. The Occupy movement is planning a number of demonstrations this month leading up towards the major day of action planned for May Day. That's May 1st. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission has given approval for 2 nuclear reactors in South Carolina. Scana Corporation and Santee Cooper have been authorized to build the reactors at the Summer Nuclear Site in South Carolina's Fairfield County. The project marks only the second time in the last 30 years that the NRC has approved new reactors. Earlier this year, the NRC also voted to allow Southern Company's plan for 2 new nuclear reactors at the Vogtle plant in eastern Georgia. As was the case in that bid, NRC Chair Gregory Atsko cast the board's sole dissenting vote. The vote comes as experts have warned radiation levels at Japan's stricken Fukushima nuclear plant have reached fatally high levels. The radiation is so high that even specially designed robots used in the cleanup effort are not equipped to enter the plant. A new investigation by the American Civil Liberties Union shows police tracking of cell phones without court-approved warrants is more widespread than previously known. According to the ACLU, just a fraction of more than 200 police departments that admitted to tracking cell phones acknowledge they've routinely obtained warrants to do so. The tracking is said to be so commonplace, cellular providers are providing police with manuals outlining the range of data they store and the pricing for police to obtain it. In related news, Britain's announced a proposal that would allow one of its intelligence agencies to monitor all domestic phone calls, text messages, and online activity under the rubric of counterterrorism. The measure would mark a drastic expansion of current rules that only allow monitoring of individuals linked to existing cases. The proposal is set to be formally unveiled next month. An Iraqi American woman beaten to death in an apparent hate crime near San Diego has been laid to rest in her native Iraq. 32-year-old Shaima Alawadi died last week, just days after she was brutally attacked in her home. Alawadi was found lying in a pool of blood next to a note saying, "Go back to your country." She was a mother of 5 children ranging in age from 8 to 17. Her daughter, Fatima al-Hamidi, and her husband, Qasim Khadim, were among the family members who accompanied her body back to Iraq for the funeral.
أنا شفت أكو أثر على رأسها وبعينها.
What I saw was a lot of blood.
رايح يعني رايح.
She was severely beaten at her eyes and brain.
واضح عليها؟
يا ما إيه.
شنو مكتوب بيها؟
They threw a letter reading, "Go home, you terrorist."
I moved to the new house 4 months ago. The owner of the house told me to watch out for some people here, asked me not to open the door. I asked why. He told me that some people talked in a bad way here and also threatened the Muslim family who lived in this house before.
The Palestinian prisoner, Hana Shalabi, has been deported to the Gaza Strip to begin serving 3 years in forced exile. Shalabi ended her 43-day hunger strike last week, protesting Israel's administrative detention practices. She was recently hospitalized amidst warnings her life was in grave danger. A native of the West Bank, Shalabi will be forced to spend the next 3 years in Gaza. Hundreds of peace activists were arrested Sunday while trying to break into the NATO headquarters in Brussels. The action was held to protest the occupation of Afghanistan ahead of the NATO summit in Chicago next month. Brussels police say 483 people were detained. The Republican presidential primary continues with the vote Tuesday in Wisconsin. Front-runner Mitt Romney has won a number of endorsements from well-known party members in recent days, including Senator Marco Rubio of Florida and former President George H.W. Bush. On Sunday, Romney's main challenger, Rick Santorum, vowed to stay in the race.
I just think, you know, we have a lot of panic out there among the establishment because the establishment has tried to convince the Republicans across this country and conservatives across this country that they need Mitt Romney shoved down their throat, and they're trying everything they can. They're not making the sale on the money, on the endorsements. They're not making the sale on the policies and what he's standing for because he's all over the map. So they have to make the case of inevitability. And I can tell you, as you saw the poll came out this week that 60+% of the people in the Republican Party don't want me to get out of this race because they want a conservative. And right now, this is the chance is Rick Santorum, and hopefully we'll show that here in Wisconsin.
The late banjo musician Earl Scruggs was laid to rest in Nashville Sunday following his death last week at the age of 88. Scruggs was widely considered a musical legend who helped pioneer bluegrass. And the former government official turned anti-nuclear activist Roger Melander has died at the age of 71. He left his White House post at the National Security Council in 1981 to form the group Ground Zero, which organized the historic anti-nuclear protest across the U.S. in April the following year. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report.